Hello, and welcome to episode 39 of My Dog Will Eat My Face. I don't have much preparation for this week's podcast, unfortunately, mainly because the reason of, dealing with dying. I'll get into those reasons here in a little minute. But one thing you have to consider that as I do produce this podcast, it is not a farce, it is not a ruse. I am systemically declining and facing my fate of death. And that's really not a pleasurable experience. You would think that being so young would make it better, but it really doesn't in my book. Mainly because if you're younger, it just prolongs the pain and the suffering, and you're gonna hear some of that in my voice, like just there. As I do this podcast, unfortunately. There's just no way around it. It's either that or no podcast at certain times. So it's a difficult thing to deal with. And one of the things I want to touch on is, first of all, what are those physical ailments, like I said? What do I have to deal with? Sometimes on a daily basis. And why was this last week in particular very, very difficult? And also, I'd like to touch on just what I can do to keep my head above water through the pain and through the misery that's going on. That's probably the hardest part, and probably the part where listeners will really want to chime into. Because I question myself, how in God's name am I going to keep my head above water and deal with the pain and the suffering that I am going through? It's very real. It's not made up by any measure or sense of those words. So, with that being said, come along with me, so to speak, and I will tell you what happened in this last week that made it so particularly rough, and why the pain nowadays is significantly worse than it was prior to previous episodes. There. I can still speak English. Yay! That being said, let's move forward in the next segment, and I will describe what exactly happened to my poor, stupid butt, and go from there. So, first of all, what the heck happened in this last week that made it rougher than usual? Well, unfortunately, I had what they call another fall. That is an unfortunate piece of my condition and my slow decline, is that I fall occasionally, and that sounds weird. Why the heck would I just fall? Did a pizza land on my head? Did a brick come flying through the window? Well, those two things are true, but that's not why I fell. And the reason being is, when you think of the heart, it's a pump. It's like any other pump. And I have excessive pressures, excessively high pressures, I should say, in my heart that can reach catastrophic levels. And what I mean by that is, if the differential between the two sides of the heart no longer exists, that is, for a pump to work, one side has to be significantly lower in pressure than the other, or vice versa, higher than the other. If those conditions no longer exist, the pump just doesn't work. It just kind of farts itself and leaves the room. It doesn't do anything. And that is unfortunately something that I deal with, because the pressures in my chest from my condition are so severe that there's just extremely high pressures on both sides. And they do sometimes reach that point to where they are near equilibrium, where they're almost the same pressure. And what happens when that occurs is a brick goes through my window. No. Well, that's true too. But apart from the bricks and the pizza issue I'm having, the heart stops. And that's really why I had a little bit of stupid levity to that. Because it is truly a critical issue. If that equilibrium is attained and they're about the same pressure, the heart just can't beat, and it farts itself and leaves the room. And no matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm thinking, no matter what I'm saying, no matter what action I'm taking, I stop and go right down and fall. Because the heart itself stops pumping. And it takes no doctor to say that's a bad thing. Now, so far with these falls, I've been very, very lucky to where the equilibrium was relatively short-lived and could rebound into a differential of higher pressure on one side than the other to, again, restart pumping the heart. And that's what's happened just on its own, amazingly. I've had no intervention. In fact, I have DNR rules attached to my medical care. But it just kind of pops back. And so I've been very lucky. And also, though, I've been very unlucky with what happens when I just fall, wherever I may be. There was one time when I was in the kitchen and I landed my head on beautiful granite countertops that I certainly love, but I didn't love them when my face planted full force into the countertops and then again on the floor itself. When that happened, I woke up in a pool of my own blood and didn't know even what happened. Usually what happens is I wake up in a terrible position, usually in a lot of pain, because even if I land in a quote-unquote comfortable position, I'm cutting off circulation to something, or just the way I'm sitting, just the way I landed, and leaving myself there for an extended period of time is painful. And I wake up just with that and with time loss. And that happens. That's just one of those things that occurs with heart failure that I'm experiencing. Again, I'm in end stage. So just because you have heart failure, don't expect this to happen. This is just something in particular that's happening in my case. So don't freak out and go to your cardiologist if you have heart failure and you hear my story and you think he's lying to you, that this will never happen. This is just something particular with my case of heart failure. But it's very annoying, needless to say. And what happened last Monday was a pretty significant fall. And a quite acrobatic fall, too, I might add. What actually occurred was I was sitting at my desk in my home office, and somehow I fell in my chair, which you would think would be a good thing. But the way my weight went down is very unfortunate, because at the time I was leaning back in my chair. Yeah, the one stupid thing everyone tells you should never do. Yeah, apparently they're correct. So rather than just flying down to the floor or anything like that, the chair did like an acrobatic leap to where it flipped, and I landed upside down on the floor with the with the chair now pointed in front of me, and I had seriously hit my head. It was in a lot of pain, and I was desperately trying to figure out what happened. I was in just agonizing pain and feeling all over for blood. So I didn't have a repeat of the last time I fell like that and cracked my head. Thankfully, there was no blood. But there was pain, and I called my hospice team saying I had a major fall and I'm in a lot of pain. And to be perfectly honest, I broke down. I sat there kind of in my chair, with my chair on top of me, on the ground, head in pain, and I just started crying. I just started to whimper and cry. My little dog came up and kissed me, so that was very sweet. But I had an emotional breakdown right there and then. I was just exhausted and confused. And also, apparently, I was pouring in sweat. A lot of the event I don't remember, which is another thing. I have a lot of memory loss. from the event. And some of the nurses that responded said I was sweating profusely, and that was an indicator of a cardiac issue. So that happened, was that Monday? Oh, no, not Monday night. That happened on Tuesday. Right after I pushed out the podcast last week, this happened. And after that, I faced a real bad emotional state. I was just tired of facing this and being in pain and just falling like that and flipping out like that completely unexpectedly. And I did sort of lose it. And that crept on well into the next week. And really dragged. But on top of that, I've had 2 other issues that physically happened, and those did not help as well. Oh, one aspect of falling down that I forgot to include is, since I had a cadre of nurses responding to my injury, I tried to take my appropriate pain medicine that I had filled earlier in the day. Lo and behold, I couldn't find one of the bottles of pain medicine that I had received. And that is like sacrilege. So, my provider basically asked me if I'm selling it or if I'm taking too much of it or something like that. And that really, really ticked me off, because I follow medical prescribed doses precisely, and I certainly do not sell it because I really don't want to go to jail again. I think the real jail is much worse. So that was terrible because I couldn't find the medication, and that lasted for some time. Then, on top of that, I had apparently somehow injured my foot. It was not because of the fall, actually, because it started to hurt and flare up before then, to where it basically looked like a giant clove. It looked like I had severely broken it, frankly, and it felt like it, to boot. No pun intended there, to boot. Everyone groans. Anyway, my foot was severely injured and was healing. And I was defending my integrity with my provider. And then on top of that, I have a severe back pain at this time, right now, to where in my lower right side, it hurts like the dickens. So if you hear me breathe funny or gasp or groan, there's just no way around it. I'm actually doing this podcast in severe pain. Anyway, at a later time, though, I did solve my integrity with my provider, because I finally did find of course, the bottle that I had misplaced. Well, not really misplaced. I did lose it. It was underneath my nightstand and all the way back against the wall. But I did find it and was quick to let them know to STFU and to never question me and my ethics again. So, hopefully, you won't have to deal with that if you ever plan to go through hospice. So, it's been quite a rough week of injuries, of falling, of accusations, of a hurt foot still, and a hurt back still. And I don't know what the cause is of the back. I just woke up with it this morning. So, needless to say, folks, I've not had the time to really piece together what I would like to make for a podcast. But since this is to know the experience of what it's like to go through what I am going through, there you have it. That's what I'm going through right now. And it's pretty rough. It's not easy. It's a lot of pain. I've had a lot more pain in the last few days than I've had in months prior. And I've had a lot of emotional issues because of the accusation from my provider that I was mishandling my medication and, well, just the emotional side of dealing with falling and knowing that one time it's going to happen. One time I will fall and I just won't get up. That equilibrium will stay, and that will be it for me. And it can happen at any moment. So, if I disappear from podcasting, unfortunately, that might be the reason why. I've got to try to figure out a way to notify my listeners that if I passed, I passed, but I'm not sure how to do that yet. I've got to think on that. Anyway, so it's been an extremely rough week. I'm so sorry I don't have better material for you. I feel like I'm cheating on a spouse. I just don't have anything to show for it. Or no, I feel like the kid who keeps saying the same excuse for his bad homework. There you go. That's it. That's more accurate. But the truth of the matter is dealing with this end of life stuff comes with lots of surprises and lots of pain and lots of suffering, and it's just not easy. And I'll share what I can share with you. I'll share with you these things, these physical ailments as they happen. I promise you that much. So I'll just call it the week of pain, for lack of a better word. See, my creativity's even gone. So it's just been a week of utter pain. So, my fellow listeners, it's been a dreadful time for me. And again, I apologize. I do not have a more robust podcast today. I've had to deal with a catastrophic fall. I've had to deal with a massive foot injury. And I've also had to deal with random back pain, or maybe it is related to the injury from earlier. I'm not sure. I've also had to deal with my ethics being challenged, which for me is not a way to earn my pleasantries, shall we say. And on top of all that, it's just been emotionally rough and painful and overwhelming. So, with that said, again, I apologize. I don't have more for you this week. But I'm not dead. I'm staying alive. I have no intention of dying anytime soon. I'm still giving it the fight. And how do I do that? I said I was going to tell you how I plan to do that. Well, gaming helps. I played a little Civilization 6. But then, of course, to keep in sync with the rest of the week, I lost my game to Gandhi, of course. But no, I've been gaming. I've been working on some urban design for my cities. You know, I design cities for fun and put them in the Cities Skylines game. And beyond that, the biggest help I've had is Carter, my little boy, the little puppy who is a basket case and supports me though right away. He ran to me when I fell, after all. So he's a good friend. He's a really good friend. And that's what's really kept me going, is that kind of friendship. Him, support from my family absolutely has been a huge help. So, really, the secret sauce for this week for me has been people. Having those people be there for me, and having a little dog be there for me. It isn't anything surprising, but I know I'd share, and I think that's about it. That's about all I got, is people. I haven't been doing any magical necromancy or anything else to bring me happiness or to avert the end of my time. I haven't done anything like that. I've just done the typical stuff of gaming, hobbies, and people. God, that's a good equation. Gaming, hobbies, and people. That's my equation. There you go. That's an awesome equation. That keeps me going. Just gaming, hobbies, those kind of go together. And good people. I should have thrown in good food, but I just didn't have the energy to even do that. But normally, too, good food, I'd probably throw in that as a mechanism by which I would keep myself going. So that's my secret sauce, I think. And well, with all that being said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and close this podcast out. I know, again, it's not much, and I apologize again. I apologize every episode now, and I gotta stop doing that. I should make it a goal to not apologize. So, I'm sorry for that. Get it? Anyway, it's just been rough. It's just been very difficult. The pain and the suffering has been real. It's been a very hard week emotionally. It's been a hard week with challenging my own caregivers. And right now, the way my back is hurting, I don't see it getting better anytime soon. So, unfortunately, there might be just more of this to come in the following week. So, I did promise, though, that I would share the experience of what it's like to decline and die. And I'm sharing it right now. It sucks. It really sucks. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. So, there you have it. That's this week's update. But I want to thank you, my listeners, for chiming in and listening to my rambling and listening to my podcast. I truly appreciate it. Don't forget to select follow and turn on notifications so you're notified of new podcasts. Hopefully a new podcast that's better well planned. And be sure to do that so you're notified of new episodes. And if you really want to be an ace, go to patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface and drop a little shekel for me and my suffering. I don't want to necessarily think that my suffering is completely free. Maybe it is. But actually, what means most to me is your listening and your listenership. So feel free to listen, share with others. I really do appreciate it. It means the world to me, actually, to have my listeners and to have someone there to listen in to me and what I'm going through this process as I slowly decline into my demise. So for that, I thank you. Most assuredly thank you. And I will plan on speaking to you next week. But for now, I'll have to just say Auf Wiedersehen.